Radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Good evening. Fade to Black. Today is Tuesday, March 11th, 2025. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Let's do this, man. Yeah, help support the show. You know what to do. Get yourself a Fade to Black T-shirt. Two ways to get them. 2 shirts, 2 links below. Get yourself a Fade to Black T-shirt. This week on Fade to Black, an amazing week. Last night, Jason Offutt was with us, Cryptid Encounters. Tonight, Preston Dennett is here, Humanoids and High Strangeness. Tomorrow night, Ellie Molina, Psychic Abilities in Children. And then Thursday night, Paul Anthony Wallace is back with us, The Truth of Contact. So we've got an amazing week coming up on Fade to Black. And I also have 5 major events coming up. I have Rise of the Guardians, March 29th and 30th, 2025 in Sedona, Arizona. Then I head to the Midwest for the Contact Modalities XPO, May 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, 2025 in Delavan, Wisconsin, at Delavan Lake at the resort. Then I come back out here for Contact in the Desert. That's May 29th through June 2nd in Palm Springs, California. Then I head south to Peru with Brian Forrester for the Inca Celebration of the Sun, June 17th through the 27th, 2025. That is sold out, but there's a cancellation. The website will have that update. Maybe you can get in, but we also have a second tour we are doing later on in the year in November. That is also on the website. So change your life, paradigm shift. Come to Peru with us. And then I head to the East Coast for the PSI Games. That's right. I am the host. I'm a game show host for the Psychic Olympics. This is August 1st through the 3rd, 2025 in Charlottesville, Virginia. So I've got a busy year. Come and hang out with us. It's going to be so much fun to meet all of you. Now, tonight, Preston Dennett is back with us. He's one of our favorite guests to have on the show. He's been on the show many times. But tonight we're going to talk about his new book, Humanoids and High Strangeness. Now, yes, he's a very prolific author, researcher. And tonight, Humanoids and High Strangeness. And the book features 20 never-before published encounters with a wide range of entities, greys, reptilians, mantids, ghosts, Bigfoot, and more. These cases include sightings, landings, onboard experiences, and physical evidence. We're going to do all of that and much more tonight with Preston, and he's right there, Preston Dennett. How you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. Not bad. How are you?
I am fantastic, Preston. And, you know, I was thinking, here's a fun fact for the audience, okay? We've known each other for a long time. And you, the first time you were on Fade to Black 12 years ago, you did it in the studio. Remember that? And we got to hang out?
Oh, yeah, I'll never forget. Yeah, that long ago. Wow.
Yeah, I know, right?
Amazing.
Where did the time go? So, but I just thought I'd share that with the audience. And Preston, your research is excellent. And I was first, again, for the audience, I was first made aware of Preston. I don't know of the exact year, but it was before my daughter was born. It was before the earthquake in 94. So this is probably, I know where I was living,
Wow.
92-ish, with a flyer, a Preston Dennett flyer. Do you remember posting those?
I do. Yep, I was investigating a wave of sightings over Topanga Canyon, And I went all out. I was cold calling. I was going door to door, and I put up these little flyers with a picture of a UFO. Have you
Yeah.
seen me?
Yeah,
Posting
yeah,
it
yeah, yeah.
everywhere.
I was having coffee. This was like not quite Topanga, but it was like down. Man, it was like around Jerry's Deli or something in Woodland Hills, like in that area, Ventura Boulevard. And I see the flyer. Have you seen? I was like, what? And I took it down. I went, this is crazy. And that was, what year do you think that was? I'm saying 92-ish.
Yeah,
Does that
would be
feel
about
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Yep.
That was
Right,
35 years ago. Now, before we get in to the conversation tonight, up to that point, that's 35 years ago. How long were you researching before that point?
Not long. It was really 1986. I became aware that UFOs were real. Had ignored the subject, was totally skeptical. Even when my brother came running in, claiming to have seen a UFO when I was 13 or so, 78-ish. But 1986 changed everything. You know that JAL sighting over Alaska, November 17? Sure you've heard of it.
Of course, of course.
That was the one that introduced me to the subject, really. By that, I mean I paid attention for the first time.
You know what was crazy for me about that case, and I'm wondering what made your eyebrows stand up, because for me, it was the description of the Japanese pilot when he said it was a giant walnut, a mile wide, right? And I'm picturing that, that shape. And that's that. What was it about the case that drew you in?
It was him describing how it paced their aircraft, that it appeared on radar. Really, it was when they showed his picture on TV, I thought, wow, this is a genuine, honest to God.
Yeah, he's legit. Yeah.
I'm like, he's lost his mind. He's going to lose his job. I was correct about that. He was grounded.
Yeah, he was grounded, given a desk job. And it was tracked, by Army and Air Force bases out there. This wasn't a one-off thing. And the other part about the case where it did catch fire was to have the FAA regional director go out and get the radar tapes, right? And then he got those confiscated. And you know what I mean? Like, this was a serious case, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It kind of slowly unfolded in terms of getting all that evidence out. But yeah, it intrigued me from the beginning. That's what made me start asking my family and friends and coworkers. And what a shock, Jimmy. I found out a good 25, 30% people I thought I knew, people I loved and trusted, certainly had encounters, and were keeping them secret from me.
But didn't we all do that?
Yeah, I get it too. I was very skeptical. I would have been mean about it, but still, I felt scandalized. I was not happy. I'm like, you should have told me. They basically said, I tried. I tried to tell you.
Right.
Which was true.
Today, friends people that I've known for a long time have revealed to their experiences, and I'm like, how long have I known you? And but they were never comfortable talking about it. I had and then we'll move on. I had a very who I was just hanging out with him a few months ago. His name's Bruce Pfeiffer. And in high school, Bruce and I were friends. And then after high school, this is in Indianapolis, we become roommates after high school. And we lived together for a while, very close. I was very close with Bruce. And about 8 years ago, I get this phone call. I look, it's Bruce. Oh, okay. What's up, Bruce? Hey, man. I said, what's up? And he goes, hey, man, did I ever tell you about the flying saucer that landed in my backyard? I go, what?
Wow.
I go, what are you talking about? He goes, you know, my house, my parents' house. I said, yeah. And he goes, okay. Before that house was built, while it was being built, we lived in an apartment complex in our neighborhood. It was called Braemar or something. And next to the freeway. And from my house, where he's talking about right now, maybe 2 miles away from my family home, and his future family home, about 2 miles west. He says he was in bed. He was like in 6th grade, I think he said. So he's probably 10 years old. He sees something light up the window in the bedroom of this apartment. And he gets out of bed, goes up to the window, and he said there was a flying saucer hovering above the 70 freeway in his backyard. And he stands there and he's watching it, and he says it lands on the freeway in his backyard. And he said it sat there for a while, and he said a trucker pulled up, a semi, and is honking its horn at it. And the trucker got out of the truck and went up and looked at it and got back in his truck, and then it rose up and flew away. Now,
wow.
I've known this guy for 40 years, and he never told me the story. And he goes, no, people just won't believe me. And
do you know what you do, though? I mean, he's got to know you're into UFOs.
Now he tells me, but when we were roommates, it wasn't like we sat around and he all told us. No, I never knew. Never knew.
Yeah.
People keep it to themselves, don't they?
Yeah. I always tell skeptics, I dare you, I give you this challenge. Ask everyone in your circle, people you love and trust. And I bet you'll get a surprise, because someone will probably not only have seen a UFO, but more. That's what really shocked me when I found out I knew people who had missing time. I mean, my sister-in-law saw grays face to face right in front of Stagg Street Elementary School in Van Nuys.
What?
Crazy. Yep. She had just
my
seen
guitars get painted on Stagg Street in Van Nuys by the Budweiser plant. Yep. Right
it's
there.
It's a crowded
right there.
area. You wouldn't think that there would be stuff going on there, but encounters happen everywhere. It doesn't really matter.
And now that's fascinating to me. It's one thing to see a flying saucer, okay, or see a craft, or see lights in the sky, daytime or night. I've seen hundreds of that, but it's another thing to take things to the next level, to see the pilot of the craft, right? But this stuff happens, doesn't it? And it's worldwide. It's not just in the United States.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I've interviewed people from Australia, France, Norway, England, Canada, across South America, Peru, Argentina, really all over the world, mostly in the US, obviously, but yeah, it's absolutely worldwide, far more common than people realize.
I'm going back to Peru in June. I think I'm going back, and for the solstice. And Wilco, our shaman, tour. He's amazing. Just an ancient wise guy, man. He's just unbelievable. But he pulls me aside. I just got back from Peru in November. He pulls me aside. He goes, okay, man, in June, when you're here, I'm going to take you to a UFO landing spot. I go, what do you mean? He goes, every night they land. Wow. What? He goes, guaranteed. What? He goes, yeah, man, it's a secret location, and it's out in the jungle. And I turned to Brian. I go, you know about this? He goes, oh, yeah. I go, what? And he goes, I'm going to take you. So I'm going to go there in June and I'll report back to you. And maybe I'll have some pictures. I don't know. Maybe take some selfies with some of them aliens, man. So now you've covered every state in the country. Have you written 50 books yet? 50 states, 50 books? Have you done that?
I'm working on it.
You're working on it. You're working.
California, Arizona, Nevada, Colorado, New Mexico,
Right.
New York. I think that's it.
Now, we're going to start tonight off in Ohio. Again, adjacent to Indiana, no stranger to high strangeness. Tonight's show is titled after your book, Humanoids and High Strangeness. And by the way, everybody, Preston's links are below and they're on our website and throughout social media. But we're going to start our journey off tonight in Ohio. This is a mother and son. What happens?
This is a really amazing case. I was really fortunate to be contacted by this guy because it's got some really important details that I think people need to know about. This is a long story, so I'll shorten it. But it all began when this gentleman I interviewed, I think his name is Richard, was 7 years old, suddenly became an insomniac overnight. Had to start checking all the windows and doors, wandering through the house, could not fall asleep. And this went on all the way through adulthood. He did have a missing time incident at one point, but never really connected anything to UFOs. His mom is a heavy smoker. She says, I'm going to a hypnotist. I think you should go too, because they can cure your insomnia. He really resisted the idea, but she finally wore him down. So they go to this hypnotist. Retha Martin is her name. I looked her up. She's very well credentialed.
What part of Ohio does this take place?
This was Cincinnati area towards.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So on the outskirts. So they go to this hypnotist and he's waiting in the waiting room and starts hearing his mom weeping loudly. So he's concerned. She's in there for a full hour. And finally she comes out all teary-eyed and he's like, what happened? What's wrong? 'Cause, he's thinking she went in there to quit smoking. And she's like, listen, I'm fine. He turns to the hypnotist, Retha. He's like, what did you do to my mom? She said, well, you can talk about it afterwards. It's your turn. Come in. And so he's all concerned now. And she's like, you came in for insomnia, right? She's like, what's wrong? He's like, I don't know. Just haven't been able to sleep since age 7. And went through all the questions, could it be child abuse? How's the home life? It's like, everything's fine. I love my family. I've got brothers and sisters. All is good. And so she says, well, let's try. Let's see what we can find out. Basically goes through the whole relaxation procedure and says, why can't you sleep? And this is when he sees this big bright light in his mind's eye, right? And so he's squinting. She's like, why are you squinting? It's like, there's a light. And just the walls of amnesia just caved right then and there. She did not need to ask him a darn thing. And he remembered being taken on board this craft, physically examined by short little grays, a medium-sized, and a tall gray. He said it was about 45 minutes long. He was quite scared. He said it smelled like a fish tank. It was cold inside. They kept asking, what's wrong, child? Why are you so scared? He's like, I want to go home. He was absolutely traumatized by this, but ultimately he felt like they were concerned about his welfare. They seemed to be operating on his stomach, is what he thought. He heard a woman screaming at one point, and she was letting out
on the ship,
right? She was right, and she let out a stream of curse words. And he's thinking, oh, well, there's an adult here. This is good news. Maybe they can rescue me. And long story short, the next thing he knows, he's back in his bed. And so that's what he basically recalled in a nutshell. And he accused that hypnotist because when he remembered these ETs coming into his house, which he did, he broke out of hypnosis and jumped up and was ready to throttle this woman. And she's like, listen, stop. "You're okay." He said, "You planted this in my head." She said, "No, I didn't. You can listen to the hypnosis tapes. I didn't say a darn word. You remembered this. And not only did you remember it, your mom remembered it as well, corroborating each other's story," which was true. She remembered exactly seeing her son in another room being examined.
Was
And
she the one that was screaming?
yep, and that was her. She
And
was,
were they operating on her? Alien dentist. That's what it was. It was an alien dentist. Why was she screaming? Was she screaming because of her son, or
yeah.
because they were doing something to her?
No, she was not apparently the target. She doesn't really remember a whole lot. I interviewed both of them. She's quite elderly, so it
Right.
wasn't easy. But her son was clearly the target. They wanted to do something with his stomach area, which later on he found out what it might have been.
And what was it?
He, as an adult, started experiencing severe stomach pain and went to the doctor, and they couldn't diagnose him for 3 or 4 trips. Finally, he falls to the ground in excruciating pain, goes to the emergency room. Now they do an MRI, and there's a tumor in there, a benign tumor, but it's huge. It's the biggest tumor they've ever seen. And they said it must have been in there since you were a little child, because it's wound all right up through your intestines there. And I asked him about this. He's like, I have this strangest feeling that the ETs knew about this and were just making sure that it wasn't going to hurt me. His words, not mine. So he had a feeling like they were looking out for him.
That doesn't that remind you a little bit about how Travis Walton has changed his tune, where he now feels that ET was trying to help him because they hurt him. And that's why the abduction happened, because, they blasted him with something and they physically hurt him. And he thinks they were actually trying to help him.
Yeah, well, he ran right up under that thing. I've learned from, interviewing people, probably not a good idea.
No.
They can discharge or radiate.
No.
But it's a pattern I see a lot. People will initially view the encounter as negative, generally because it's so darn scary, and the examination is never fun for people.
I think we have to take it on a case-by-case basis, in that if you do have an encounter like that, you stumble upon a couple of, entities walking around the woods, do you approach them or do you run? Well, what are they showing? Are they showing hostility? Guns, right? Weapons? Or are they, showing outward signs of peace? And what would you do? Would you approach or would you run?
Oh, yeah. I would absolutely approach. That's me. I understand. I've never had a fear of these things, and I think, interviewing a lot of people has really reaffirmed that, because I think we've got a really good handle on what to expect when a person is taken on board. Yeah, they'll be physically examined, sometimes healed. It's not uncommon. 30% of cases about in my own files. But they'll take you down to the engine room. They'll show you how the craft works. They'll take you to an observation deck, show you the moon, the earth, a field of stars, Saturn in a couple of cases. They will literally take you up to the control room and sit you in the pilot seat. This is not uncommon. Grant Cameron wrote a book about, sky pilots.
Yes.
Not too long ago.
Great book.
Who've had that exact experience.
Mm-hmm,
so if you go through the sequence of events, it's not the horror story that it's often portrayed in the media.
And before we get to our next case, why do we have in this community the line in the sand? One side is benevolent, the other side is malevolent. Very rarely do you have people in the middle. You know what I mean? And the arguments can flare up and get pretty serious on the subject. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, well, I think it's difficult to be objective with this subject. There's a lot of emotion attached to it. I think there's also the problem of a cover-up and of intentionally put forth a fear campaign, which I don't think is warranted. I've always been very objective. facts only, let the witnesses speak for themselves. I try really hard to do that. And I'm often accused of like saying, oh, ETs are all positive. I'm like, read my books. Take a closer look. Because no, I've never said that everyone's experience is all puppies and rainbows. It can be very scary. Usually is. And there is often trauma involved, especially in the beginning. But I can tell you that 80% of the people have told me, and I always ask them, do you think they're evil? Are they out to hurt you? No. About less than 10% will say it was a horrible experience. I don't like it. Wish they
But I
would go
do
away.
it again. But I do it again.
That almost always comes up. People would not trade it for anything.
Yeah,
But I have to close up this first story real quick. He had this experience at age 7, right? Well, his mom had an experience at age 7. He has a daughter. He grows up, has a daughter. She's 7 years old, starts having nosebleeds. And they're attributing it to dry air until he's watching TV about the Greys. She comes running and says, Daddy, that's the monster that's poking my nose. It was a Grey. So this is 3 generations at age 7. Well, she grows up. She has a daughter who's just recently 7 years old. Says, Mommy, there's a weird bald monkey standing outside my window. And she, of course, calls her dad to talk to his granddaughter. That's 4 generations, all at age 7.
So Richard's granddaughter just turned 7 and is now having, wow.
A couple of years ago.
So that's 4 generations.
Yep, we know this is generational, but that's the first
so
case I had with
Richard's mom, Richard's daughter, and Richard's granddaughter.
Yep. Get this too. This is really interesting. He took his daughter to the dentist. They found evidence of an implant on the x-ray. So he took her to a doctor, and the doctor was very blasé and said, let's just leave it alone. He's like, I don't know what this is. It's up in her sinus. He says, let's just leave it alone. He didn't want to do that. So he went to another doctor who was very blasé again. He goes to this third doctor who closes the door and says, if you tell anybody I've told you this, I will deny it. And pulls out this form from his desk, which is an official government document, a memo. He says, most doctors that I know of have gotten this memo, which says, if you find evidence of an implant that you do not know where it came from, you are not to touch it. You are not to remove it. And failure to do this will result in fines, losing your license, and possibly imprisonment. And Richard said it looked like an official document to him. So I don't know. I've talked to other people who've had real problems with their doctors, actually altering x-rays to erase the evidence of an implant. So I don't know. I don't know if that's true. That's the only report I've gotten from that.
Right. I've never heard anything like that, but it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me. Doctors are secretive. They are so used to that patient-doctor privilege, right? And you can't pry that stuff out of them. Medical records, this stuff is private. So doctors are used to keeping secrets. So if a memo,
the thumb of the insurance companies, they don't have the freedom you might think they have.
That's what I'm saying, and they are dealing with this kind of stuff all of the time. So to have a memo like that go around and the possibility that the public has never been made aware of something like this, I buy into that. I think doctors could keep that secret. You know what that reminds me of, and then we'll move on because we got Peru next. Is John Greenwald published the National Parks Training Guide for park rangers, right? The federal guide. And the original version of it had a page about Bigfoot DNA. Okay, right there. DNA was sent in, it was tested, and it was not human, right? And the new version, you can go to Black Vault and check this out for yourself. The new version of it, he's got the same books, one with the page and one without it. Yeah.
That's damning evidence right there.
Yeah.
Insane.
Peru. And like I said, I'm going to be in Peru in November or in June and then back. I love Peru. I don't know if you've been, but that's a magical place, man. And there's something going on there for sure. And I've seen the skulls, right? I've been all over the country, and there is certainly, I believe, an ET connection. It's all over the country.
Oh yeah, there's been some really famous. Sisto Paz Wells came out of Peru. He's a really well-known worldwide contactee. I've spoken with him. He's
Have
absolutely
you?
legit. Oh yeah.
Yeah, his case is amazing. It's amazing. Well, this is about a tour guide and an English teacher. What happens?
Yeah, a good witness. I spoke with him for quite a long time, did repeated interviews. He's had a lot of experiences, but really, for him, it all began in 2013. He had just had a real hard time getting stable with his life because he had lost his job as a tour guide and started meditating, couldn't afford meat, so he's vegetarian, and all of this kind of woke him up. But so one evening in 2013, he starts having this vision of this fiery kind of rectangular-ish object. And he's looking down on it from above, and he can see it's approaching his house. This is remote viewing, is how he described it. He didn't know what remote viewing was back then. So he's like freaking out. And he gets this message in his head, Mira el cielo. Go out, look at the sky. So he's like, this is something significant. Goes outside and sees this thing now physically with his own eyes approaching. And it's quite low, and he can see inside this thing a human figure. Absolutely human looking. He said it reminded him instantly of Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man, the sketch with the arms outstretched, with really the only difference was the arms were forward with the palms upward in a kind of supplicating gesture. And a beautiful man. He could really see only a silhouette, but perfect proportions. And he felt this sense of intense love. This is interesting because he uses a phrase that I've heard a lot of people tell me. It's a love like never before. He said it was more than the love of a parent for a child or newly married. The kind of love that overwhelmed him, that he felt it was almost lifting him up. It actually scared him a bit. So it's going by him, and he's realizing, nobody is seeing this. This is a fairly, suburban area. So he rushes inside to get his roommate, finally brings her out. Alexandra is her name. And she sees it just in time to move off. Her face drops. She's like, oh my God, what is that? She's like, it's a UFO. It's daytime. And they're going inside. And second he's inside, boom, it's night. He had missing time. That was his first encounter of what ended up being a whole series of encounters. Here's another one. He's a contactee, no doubt, because he woke up to this. He was reaching out to them. He goes to the bus stop and sees these two men, 70 years old or ish, wearing hats, sunglasses that were oversized.
Same guy in Peru.
Same guy, Sebastian Bulos.
Okay, got it.
So other people are at the bus stop, but there's these two guys who look a little strange because they're wearing almost identical clothes, and they look like twins, dead up twins. So he's kind of side-eyeing them and wondering, when he starts hearing them talking in a foreign language that was warbling and almost metallic or robotic. And he's like, God, that's weird. So he turns and looks at them. Their lips are not moving. And he knows it's coming from them because they turn and look at him and immediately kind of are startled. One gets on the bus that just pulled up. The other starts walking away. And so he's freaking out. He's like, gosh, who are these guys? Are they men in black? What's going on? He's getting on his bus, turns around to this guy who's still walking down the alley. This guy turns around, looks straight at him for a long 3 seconds, turns back around, walks off. He thinks they were ETs walking among us. There was something going on there. But he ended up seeing flying humanoids, which is all the rage in Peru.
Yes.
He would be called outside. He would have a vision and boom, they would appear with the weird patterns. First one occurred on one day, 5 days later, 5 minutes, another encounter. 5 days later, 5 minutes after that, another encounter. And his parents saw it at one point. He had witnesses. He was able to photograph a couple of them. Didn't come out that well.
Okay.
But yeah, he started.
Yeah,
having
that's definitely
psychic
humanoids
stuff.
and high strangeness right there. What city does Sebastian live in?
Oh gosh, I think that was Lima. Yeah,
Okay.
outside of Lima. Yep.
Yeah. Wow. Wow, that's
Yeah.
fascinating. When you go to, well, no, before I even say something that really stupid, um, in that Lima is big and it's cosmopolitan. It's a major city for sure on every level, but it doesn't take much when you get outside of Lima where you are remote. I mean, remote. It just doesn't take long, and the desert runs all along the coast there in Peru. So as soon as you head out of Lima, it doesn't matter north or south. You head out of Lima, you're in some of the most remote areas, and there's this place driving. I don't know if you've heard of this case, but driving south out of Lima, going to Paracas. You drive through this very nice area. It's big. It's probably 10, 15 miles long. It's called Asia. It's Asia. It's spelled Asia, but they call it Asia. And very nice. But as soon as you get through that area, I all that I love, Preston, this is what happens. You see this first sign, they're all green, on the side of the road for alien ice cream.
Really?
So they'll have the little green dude with antennas, right? Holding an ice cream cone with a flying saucer. And so you see and you're like, oh, okay. And then there's another one. There's another one. And for the next 10 miles on both sides of the freeway are these alien ET ice cream stands. There's hundreds of them. Hundreds. I've got so many. I took pictures of as many as I could. Anyway, so I turn. This is on my first trip there. I've done it every time I've been in Peru, though. I said, what's up with the... And they said, this is Chica. They had a UFO landing back in the 80s. And it happened in the mountain right there. It landed. ETs came out of the craft and was there for a long time. And the military came in, shut down the area for 4 months, would not let anybody in or out. Nobody knows what happened to the flying saucer or the ETs. But the town embraces this. And so for that whole stretch of freeway, it's alien ice cream stands. It's the craziest story like I've ever heard.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've heard of that one, but Peruvian Andes, they've had a lot of stuff up there.
Let's see. Hold on for a second. Let's see if I have the ice cream stands here. Okay. Watch this. You ready?
All right.
I love this, that we can do this now in my... Okay. So I now have the ability to do a quick slideshow. Okay. What? Okay. Yeah, that should pop up. Okay. Let's go with... Okay. Oh, it won't let me open the files. Okay, I have to do it this way, which is not a big deal. But I'm going to make this really quick. We don't have to look at every single image here.
I hope it's good ice cream, because
So check it out. All right. And if you zoom in, this is just one shot. These are the signs. Okay. If you look in the background here, look right here. See the flying saucer? Okay. Well, hold on. All right. Let's go
see
to
the little
next
ET guy there.
Yeah. They are all over the place. See the ET guy? Right. All right.
Yep.
All right. Okay. So,
Wow.
yeah, it's crazy. And look at the flying saucer. Right.
Yep. I see it.
And this is across the street from the bus. There's 1, 2, 3 of them in a row.
I'm telling you, it saturates our culture. It's
Yeah,
in video
yeah.
games, it's in advertising, it's in books, of course, and movies,
Look at this. There's
songs.
three right in a row. There's another one. There's another one in the background, and there's ladies dressed up, right? It's like, now look up the street here. Look what I'm showing you. There's another one. 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 Another one. Another one. Like, right. It's like the craziest.
Wow.
And for me, when I found out, actually, the actual story, look at this. Boom, 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 boom. These look like the same photographs. They're not.
It's crazy.
Unbelievable. And that's Peru. It's nuts.
It's wild.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's Peru. Let's go to France. Yeah. Okay, let's go.
Yeah, this guy was real interesting. He was very, very cagey, very wary. Absolutely made me sign something that I would not use his name or any identifying details. So I just gave him a pseudonym. He's a really intelligent guy. He's got a couple of degrees, really smart. Had lifelong experiences that began at a very young age. He was about 4 years old and woke up on board a craft. And he didn't get a good look at these ETs. They were wearing these robes, like monk robes, he said. Quite tall, 6, maybe 7 feet tall. Hard to say, because he was quite young. But he said he gave these descriptions that, I hear so often. He said the inside of this craft was very sparse, and the table that he was on came up out of the floor. It was part of the craft itself. Everything inside of this craft was part of the craft, which looked almost like translucent white glass. Very clean. There was a male figure and a female, he's guessing, because the male was very stern. He said, "You cannot look at us. Stop trying to look at us." And the female, who he perceived as a female, said, "We're almost done. We'll be done soon, but I want to show you something. You need to see your home world." And it took him to the side of this craft. And he said it wasn't a window so much as they turned the side of the craft transparent. It's an important detail because that's usually what I hear. And they showed him this world that was just completely green, not Earth. It was absolutely this green. They said, "This is where you come from." And that really fascinated him, because being inside of the craft, he says it was different, but it wasn't so different. It was kind of like a doctor's office, is how he described it. But seeing that, he knew this was really unusual. And the next thing he knows, the scene is shifting, the stars are blurring, and boom, there's Earth coming, getting closer and closer, and boom, he's in bed. He wakes up the next morning, he's thinking, how do I tell people about this? And his mom comes in, and she's like, "I need to talk to you about something." She closes the door. She says, "Where were you last night?" He's like, "What are you talking about?" She says, "You weren't in bed. You weren't in the house. Where were you?" He's like, "Well, Mom," and he explained what happened. And she said, "Son, never forget this. never tell anybody about it, but never talk about this ever. She forbid him from watching science fiction. She was very stern about it. I suspect she had encounters as well. She would not tell him. He tried to get it out of her. But this began a whole lifelong series of really amazing contacts for this guy. He would walk to school. He gets to school one day. The teacher's furious. He's like, "Where have you been? You're 3 hours late." He remembered being in this room with these other children. There was this tall, unusual looking woman who wasn't quite human, but certainly not a gray as we would think of it, sort of a hybrid, I'm guessing, and a really weird tree in the center. The floor was artificial, and all the children were being taught. And he got up, and they put an implant in his leg. He still has a little scar there. He would wake up with all kinds of marks on his body to the point where his parents were accused of child abuse. He says they were not abusive. They absolutely loved me. I loved them. I mean, his story just goes on from there. He's had at least 2 other full-on onboard experiences. One where he was with 2 people who he recognized but doesn't know. He doesn't know them, but he felt like they were his friends. And there was a human-looking ET, he's presuming, who was piloting the craft. But there was no craft that they could see. It was just completely transparent, except for one part of it, where the guy was kind of flying the craft. Took him up to this massive UFO and actually let one of the other guys pilot it briefly until he started to fly it towards this mothership. Said, "No, cool. We can't do that. We're going home now." I mean, the things coming out of this guy, I mean, the experiences he's had are just off the charts.
I wonder how many people, if they stop and think about their childhood, was there anything strange going on that at the time you thought was normal, but now was it strange? Like this classroom situation, right? I grew up in a military family, and so I was on Army bases and DOD schools and all of that stuff. I don't have any memories of anything funky. I wasn't taking any special program, any special location, didn't do anything underground. If people stop and think, because you put it in a box on the shelf and you just kind of forget about it.
Yeah.
But a room full of kids being taught. Yeah. I want to know what's going on with that. And it sounds like these were real experiences. This wasn't something in a dream.
Oh no, he was missing,
Mm-hmm.
That happened 4 times where his parents were called, like, "Where's your kid? He didn't show up at school. What's going on?" So that happened at least 4 times. It was always in that same environment, same children. I've heard this. They're usually being taught, different things, psychic abilities sometimes, but sometimes science and stuff like this. One guy, he described, this is a completely different case. They were teaching him how to operate the ET technology, all kinds of really interesting. He ended up, talk about high strangeness. They showed him his deceased father. He met the spirit of his father on board a craft. I have just 2 cases like that. Whitley Strieber talks about this. I'm like, Whitley, I don't know. Finally I got a case. This guy met his father.
The spirit.
Yep.
Contact. Yeah, that's right. Jodie Foster. You remember when she goes to the other planet? Who does she meet?
Yeah, I'm telling you,
Her
and I know
father
this
on the
for a
beach.
fact that some researchers have edited out the spiritual and high strangeness aspects of people's encounters, either because they're not interested, or they're disbelieving, or they want to be facts only. I shouldn't say facts only, but trying to be nuts and bolts about it.
Yeah. And I think in the end, what do you think? You think consciousness is the secret?
I think
You know what I mean? The thing that connects all of this together.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's really interesting if you profile the contactees, and I've done this. It's evenly divided between men and women. It's people of all ancestries. There's no real bearing on religion or political affiliation or gender or any of this. But what I did find is pretty much without exception, they do have a whole range of psychic experiences. Quite a few have had near-death experiences, and that can be one modality, for lack of a
Right.
better word, to wake a person up to this. And then they start having experiences. But yeah, clairvoyance, remote viewing, astral projection, mediumship, healing, physical levitation. One lady in this book, she levitated as a little girl, scared the daylights out of her mother. That happened with Dolly Saffron, who I believe we were on
Yeah.
the
Dolly's
show
great. Yeah.
back in the day. Well, not too
Mhm.
long ago. She levitated as a child. So this is absolutely related to, I think, consciousness, and is one of the ET agendas. They've got 5 or 6 basic agendas. One is healing, absolutely demonstrably true. Another is warning, over and over again. If you get a message, it's going to be about nuclear proliferation, war and aggression, pollution, destruction of the environment. Another is hands down waking a person up to their own psychic ability. It's a very prominent pattern.
It's such a fascinating part of all of this, where you look at the breakdown of words, of vocabulary, the lack of language, the experiences from 5,000 years ago and 4,000, 3,000, 2,000, which ended up turning into and having a religious context because of what was being seen. And then you have to express it with language, and you can't. You don't have the right words for it.
Yep.
Today, we can talk about parallel worlds or consciousness or teleportate. We can, you know what I mean? We can define things in a certain way where it just appears like the son that sees the spirit of his father on an ET craft. Well, what is that 2,000 years ago? That's a religious experience, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. ETs wasn't really in the popular culture back then. And if you look back through history, and you can see this in relatively recent cases, we all perceive our experiences through the lens of our belief system. And if it's something that's outside of your belief system, then it's very challenging. An experience like an onboard experience challenges a person sometimes physically, but certainly mentally, spiritually, psychically, on all levels. So it's really difficult for people to process initially.
I think Dolly's in the chat with us tonight.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, isn't that strange? Yeah.
I advertised, I posted all over.
Yeah, there she is right there. Preston wrote on my case. There's Dolly right there. Dolly's great.
Yeah, she's amazing.
You know what? I'm going to do it. I have to. Hello, Dolly. I have to.
She's never heard that before.
Yeah, like I'm planting a flag. Yeah, right. Oh, man. Okay. Before the break, let's do my home state. Let's do California.
Oh, I think I know which case that one is.
Yeah, the tree spirit.
Yeah, really amazing. This lady, actually, I always ask people to write down your experiences. Boy, did she ever. She wrote a book. And so which is so wonderful, because she was a great writer. And then I was able to basically do a real in-depth interview with her. And her experiences were off the charts strange. From a very young age, she started having psychic experiences, ghostly activity, all kinds of stuff. Little humanoids coming into her room, the room filling with light, clearly ET. I mean, she saw a UFO with missing time. But she started having this dream of a crowd of kids coming to attack her. She asked her mom about it. She's like, because her dreams come true sometimes. Her mom's like, how is school? She's like, well, everything's fine. I'm getting A's. Everything's great. She's like, well, don't worry about it. But she's walking to school one day, and her friend, for no reason, picks up a rock and throws it, accidentally hits the 8th grade bully, the meanest kid in school. And so this ends up, she's like, I'm going to stay late in school. I'm not walking home today. I'm going to wait till everyone leaves. What she did didn't work. She's walking home. There's the bully with a crowd of kids, attacks her, absolutely attacks her to the point where she very nearly was hospitalized. If her other sister hadn't come and pulled her free, she would have, could have lost her life, is how serious this was. They ended up pulling her out of school. That was it. So she became very isolated. They moved to Julian, a beautiful little town in, below Los Angeles, between San Diego and Los Angeles, filled with trees. And she just became enamored with trees. And, her parents bought her a little doctor's kit. She used it on trees. Well, she had no friends, right? She was well adjusted in her family, but was somewhat isolated from this incident, and started having these nightly experiences, which are not dreams, not as we would think of it. Probably out-of-body experiences, because she started having a lot of these. And it would be this tree spirit. He says, you can call me Birch. She finally asked him, and would regale her with all this philosophical wisdom, most of which she could not remember. But it was every single night that this happened. These were not normal dreams, which are very, changeable and off the wall. She never really could see what he looked like, or remember at least. But
Birch.
For the full summer, she had conversations with what she believes is a tree spirit. Now, here's a really weird waking experience, which might be, she thinks certainly, is connected to this. It was Christmas coming up, and she's like, Mom, I want a long pair of underwear. All her friends were horseback riders. They'd go riding out in the snow, and she was freezing her butt off. She's like, that's all I want. She didn't get it. She was so disappointed. She got a book on horses. They were poor, right?
Right.
She was so mad, she jumps on her horse, an old horse, goes running into the woods, and cannot believe her eyes. She calls this the long underwear miracle, because hanging on a hanger is a fresh new pair of long underwear in the middle of the forest, right where she had ridden her horse to. Impossible.
Shut up. Right.
I mean, this is just absolutely bizarre. I mean, it was glinting in the sun, surrounded with an aura of light. I mean, this was crazy.
When was the last time you wore long underwear? Think about that for a second. No, I'm being serious. When was the last time?
Skiing when I was in my 20s. Yeah.
Right. So I get this Harley, and it's winter time, and I went out and just, putting on jeans, a leather jacket. Oh, turn around, park the bike, jumped on Amazon, or I went to Walmart or something, Target, and I bought long johns. Now I have a whole collection of them, and I have sports versions of it, thermals, stuff. But I have to wear it all the time now in the winter. And I haven't worn them since I was a kid, like you were just saying. Now I have a drawer of long johns and thermals.
I don't like being cold. I still have a pair just in case.
Yep. I love wearing them though, and they work, especially the new space age stuff that's out. Different materials and lined differently. I fear nothing. It would have to. Well, I don't ride when it's freezing, but it would have to be really cold for me to feel it now. Yeah. I can't believe I did that, but I did. I went out and bought long johns. All right, let's take our break. Our guest tonight is Preston Dennett, Humanoids and High Strangeness. We'll be right back after this short break. This is Fade to Black. Stay with us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get your alerts and access to over 2,000 videos. Click that subscribe button right now. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and get the Fade to Black official podcast. 2,000 episodes, all of them commercial free for just $2 a month. Watch Into the Vortex on Gaia TV. It's Fade to Black for the screen. Simple to do. Go to Gaia.com, search Jimmy Church, or click on the link below. Follow Fade to Black on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Get all of the show updates every single day. It's now called X, but who cares? How you doing? Jimmy Church here. Special announcement. Get your Fade to Black T-shirts. That's right. Help support the show. Help support everything that we do over here. We've got 2 T-shirts. We've got 2 ways to get them. Get your Fade to Black T-shirt today. Go Backley Tappy. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and become a Fadernaut. Get a membership. That's right. Everything is commercial free. You have access to downloads, and you get to call yourself a Fadernaut. Today we're headed to Bolivia, Tiwanaku, Peru, and of course, Pumapunku. Brian, exciting. Thank you so much for everything, my friend.
Always an honor. Right behind us is the sacred river of the Inca that goes past Machu Picchu. So we're going to be driving up to its source at 15,000 feet above sea level and then down to Lake Titicaca.
So today we hit 15,000 feet.
Yes.
Crazy. And you can do it with us. All you have to do is go to hiddenincatours.com. Simple. We've got 2 tours coming up next year, one in June for the summer solstice,
That's
right? And then another one right here in November. So hiddenincatours.com. Come and hang out with Brian and I and his amazing team.
Right on.
River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon Wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com. All right. Welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church, tonight. Preston Dennett is with us. He's got a new book out, everybody. Humanoids and High Strangeness. Preston's links are below on our website and throughout social media. Tonight, we're talking about some of the cases, all of them never before published from the book, and some of the highlights. And Preston, great conversation. I'm going to share this with you. When my old house, you were there. I'm having a dinner party, and one of the guests, Jason Martell, was there. But one of the guests was a friend of mine from junior high and high school, the drummer in our garage band growing up in Panama, Central America. His name is Javier. And he was a great friend of mine. Anyway, but he lives in Southern California. So I invite him over to the house, and we're sitting on my back patio cooking out. And Javier turns to me and he says this: Do you remember that time we were with Alan and Rocky and our friends, and that flying saucer flew over us, and you pointed at, and you said, "There's a UFO." I go, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah, man." And you were so excited, you jumped up, and I go, "What did it look like?" I didn't remember it, Preston. He goes, "It was a round silver flying saucer with lights on it, and it was right above us." I go, "It was me, Church. It was you." And then he calls up our friend that was with us, one of our friends, and who lives in Florida. "Dude, you remember that time Jimmy saw the flying?" Yeah, we were all at so and I was like, "What? I don't remember it." And this next case is
A
about
red flag. It's a red flag there.
dude, I don't want to know. I don't want to. I'm comfortable where I am right now. But this next case is two young boys from Canada that are out, and they have an experience together as kids. What happens?
Yeah, I mean, of all the stories in the book, this one really kind of touched me the deepest because it's really unusual. And this guy was just an amazing guy. Again, wanted to be anonymous. It's really the story of two boys, Carter and Jackson, are the pseudonyms I chose for them, who became good friends because they lived near each other and would walk to school each day. And we're both intelligent young men, but interested in kind of deep subjects, right? And one day, Jackson gets all pensive and silent, and Carter's like, "What's up? Why aren't you talking?" And he says, "Well, you're not going to believe me if I tell you." Said, "Tell me." And he described this amazing out-of-body experience he had. They didn't know what that meant at that time. This was, quite some time ago. I think it was, 1968. So this got them interested. He's like, "We're going to learn how to go out of body," and started meditating and doing all of this stuff and not having a whole lot of success. But events took kind of a turn into the Twilight Zone when Jackson's walking down the street. They used to hitchhike quite a bit in those days. It was considered safer. That was how they got around. And this truck pulls over. Jackson's walking to his home, which is several miles away. This is in the Ontario, Canada area. And this truck pulls over. These two guys get out and see Carter there, or no, I'm sorry, Jackson, and say, "Be careful, that guy's a little strange." And they walk off into the wilderness there. Nothing's there. So he's thinking, well, that's kind of odd. But the door's open, so he gets into this truck, and there's this enormously obese guy, right? And he turns to him and says, "So, Jackson," knows his name, how is the attempts to go out of body going?" So no way he could know this. There is no way. He's like, "How do you know that?" And he just kind of laughed uproariously. And it turned out this guy was a pretty interesting guy, and started talking about all these subjects that he was interested in, and basically said, "Well, I'm in contact with ETs. I work for them." He's like, "Well, what do you do?" He's like, "Well, I, bring stuff back and forth for them." Really kind of cagey about it. Ended up meeting him again and doing psychic exercises, and this guy could do all kinds of stuff, read your mind, make objects move and stuff like this. So he's like, tells his friend Carter, "You're not going to believe I met this weird guy, Peter. He's super fat." And so he's like, "Well, I want to meet him too." This is not a weird, because people are like, "Oh, the older men meeting young boys." No,
it sounds like it could get really funky really quick.
Yeah, it's not going in that direction.
Okay.
No.
All right.
This was wholly innocent for the, Carter, because they're 12 years old, I think they were at that age. Yeah, it was around 12 years old. At any rate, so they meet this guy again, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm in contact with the ETs. I work for them," and asked, "Would you like to go on board? I can take you on board." They completely chickened out. He's like, "Well, you'll probably have some experiences." A couple of weeks go by. They're in their cabin north of Ontario, and two of the, he's in the cabin, and his friends, including Jackson, come running, and we just saw a Martian. You're not going to believe it. We just saw a Martian. What we now know is a gray. So Carter, the guy I interviewed, was like really disappointed he missed out. But a day or two later, he's walking across this bridge and looks down, and there's this little gray. And he says this gray was very friendly. He says as soon as he saw it, it was just 100 feet away, he was taken aback and went like that. And that's exactly what the gray did. He mimicked him and went. And so he leaned forward and went like that. That's exactly what the gray did. Just really, he says, it was almost playful like an elf. And this was right after, the Peter, this guy, who, there's quite a few stories that they related about Peter, which are really unusual.
Whatever happened to Peter?
He disappeared one day, disappeared. But he said he was a spiritual teacher, better than Gurdjieff and Uspensky and all these other guys he ended up looking up later in life into college. Never met him again, but absolutely changed the course of his life.
Gurdjieff is weak.
He ended up having an experience in Hawaii where he and his wife, the whole cabin lit up, and then it went dark. I'm like, did you see that? Lit up again, went dark, and it was clear that they had had missing time at this point. And so he's like, meditate. We've got to meditate right now. We can remember this. And she remembered being in a plane with this little small man who looked not quite human. And he remembered being in this craft, placed inside of it, and said it was like alive. This was a living craft. This is an important detail because this is something a lot of contactees described. And they were training him how to fly this craft. He said it was like a nervous system. All of it was very intricately connected to him psychically. And that's all he really remembers. But it's an important detail because this is something I do here. He's had a lot of really weird experiences, to say the least.
When it comes to what ET looks like, because we've heard all kinds of different descriptions, and I am on the side of this whole thing where I think there's an infinite amount of species that have visited this planet. It's not just grays, it's versions of grays from the other side of the universe that they're not from the same planet or whatever. There's too much life out there, Preston, way too much. So, but I had a friend who told me about this experience here in Southern California on the Angeles Crest Freeway.
Oh.
He's with his brother, and they're driving up into the mountains in traffic. Okay. They come around the corner and traffic is stopped in both directions. And they see 3 kids standing on the side of the road, like in the road, blocking traffic. And they look, and he said they were little gray aliens in uniforms, but they were flat like cookies. And they were 2D. And they shimmered when they walked. But he said they were flat. And they were facing him so he could see the outline, and their arms are outstretched. He said, but when they walked and their legs moved, they walked, but they shimmered. And then they crossed the street and then ran down into the woods. And
wow.
2D, like running gingerbread cookies is how he described them. Gingerbread man cookies. And so they pull over and park the car and jump out and chase them through the woods. Yeah. And they catch up to him. And he said they were shimmering and running 2D flat. And you just try to picture, it's so outrageous, right? It's like, but what are we, what do we expect ET to be like? You know what I mean? There's so much to this story, the way he describes it, that seems legit. To have an encounter like that, okay. And then there's, little grays, okay. But they were flat like gingerbread man cookies. What? That's what makes it legit to me.
Yeah, it's not the kind of detail you would or could make up. I mean,
you would not bring that detail out because you sound crazy. Yeah,
I can't say I've heard anything like that, but I've heard that shimmering quality. And sort of a two-dimensional looking. But
he said every time they almost caught him in the woods and they were chasing him down, they would then run further away. They almost caught him a couple of times. Crazy story, but it just goes back to my point. There must be an infinite amount of species, different kinds. And why would we expect them all to look like you and I?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's really hard to categorize because I think we all think, well, they're grays, many different kinds of grays. And of course, absolutely human looking, but praying mantis, little blue beings, tall whites, light beings, sometimes robotic beings, almost always humanoid. There are outlying cases. It's statistically insignificant, honestly, because I went through all the books behind me. It's not even all the books I have. And the UFO News Clipping Service and all of the databases. Almost all humanoid.
You know why it makes sense? The design, 2 arms, 2 legs, stereo vision, stereo. You know what I mean? The design, opposing thumbs. This design is a good design. And DNA is universal, man.
Exactly.
That's it.
I think you hit on it because contactees will get that message. We share a common heritage. This is what contactees are told directly from the ETs. We have a similar ancestry. And in fact, people have been told by the Greys that the Greys themselves are essentially human. So I'm not sure the term different species is even accurate. They will say, we are one. We are, you are us, we are you. Variations of this is a message a lot of contactees get.
I don't agree. You know why I don't agree? If you and I flew to another planet and stepped off a spaceship and bumped into a little baby ET, 10 years old, whatever,
right?
He's going to run home and tell his mom that he saw 2 different kinds of aliens.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. You're making a really good point here because the ancestry on Earth alone, from very short people to very tall people, all different skin complexions. You could probably stick a couple of grays in there and no one's going to bat an eye because that's how much variation we have on this planet alone. So,
well, you've got some gray alien in you. You know that. I can see it.
I've been told.
But you just raised the best point, right? Red hair, blonde, no hair, curly, short, tall, somebody, a Mayan, a 5 foot tall Mayan standing next to an NBA player. It's 2 different, it's 2 different species. Both
different
humans.
Eyes, different nose, different mouth, different ears,
skin color,
body, all of it.
Yeah.
But we're all one race. I mean, we are all one species on this planet.
When we went to Bennu, the asteroid, right, scooped up everything and brought the stuff back, which was an amazing technical achievement for humankind. What did we find on Bennu? We found the 5 proteins for DNA. On Bennu, we found 20 amino acids, 20 of 22 of the basic sugars, amino acids for RNA on Bennu. Now, surviving the vacuum of space, right? Just flying around out there. So why wouldn't we be similar?
Exactly. Well, the fact is, we're stuck with these accounts. This is what people are reporting. So we really have to account for that. And it has huge implications when you consider some of them do look just like us. Because what does that say about us? You know, did
We
we
are
even
them.
evolve on this
Yeah,
planet?
we are them. We are them.
Yep.
And the visitations and the contact experiences, some happen when you see a craft land and you see, you know, a couple of beings outside of the craft, Socorro, New Mexico, something like that. And some of the amazing stuff in Peru and Argentina and Chile, these types of encounter. Well, Pascagoula, for instance. But a lot of these experiences have been described as entities and ET coming through walls or ceilings. And is that some kind of magic trick, or is it just a way to that they have to move between atoms? Because nothing's really solid, is it?
Exactly. They have what they can do with light beams is certainly we could learn a lot from them, because they absolutely can render solid objects permeable, can levitate people, can heal people, can render you unable to move, communicate with you, all through various, I guess, frequencies of light. But I always considered this to be a technological thing. I'm thinking some of this might be what we would call psychic, actually, because there are people on this planet who can levitate. There are people who've reported walking through walls. Carmine Mirabelli, Brazil's greatest medium, demonstrated in front of scientists the ability to levitate and walk through a wall. So I think we need to consider the possibility that some of what we're seeing is actually psychic ability on the part of the ETs, because they are.
Do you remember The Men Who Stare at Goats?
Oh, yeah, sure do.
You remember
Yeah.
that? You remember he's trying to run through walls, keeps bouncing off the walls
I
until
love
the
the movie.
last scene of the movie. Yeah, yeah. That last scene is fantastic. How do we move through the wall when that encounter happens? ET, I can understand. They got the magic ring, magic bracelet. They've got the technology. It's however they do it. But
Yeah.
we seem to go through those walls too.
Yeah, which is what makes me think that they're probably using some form of radiation, some light, electromagnetic spectrum, which is able to take all the molecules and turn them. I don't know. I mean, I can only speculate. ETs have certainly demonstrated this for some contactees, because one guy I interviewed asked them flat out how they did it. And they didn't explain it, they just showed him. And they will turn something completely they could take half your wall away and it looks like it's gone.
Right.
And they walk through. So I'm not sure if they're completely obliterating it and reforming it, or if they're just turning I don't know. There's so much to learn about all of this.
I don't know if I can handle that experience. I mean, if it happened, you're just going to deal with it. But trust me, I'll admit it. There has been times, I live alone. There have been times where I have woken up, my eyes aren't open yet. And I say to myself, please, I don't want ET in my room right now. I don't know if I can handle that.
Well,
have you had that experience? I know you've been close. Yeah, you have, haven't you?
Yeah, it eventually did happen to me, a full-on conscious onboard experience. It is in my family. Going back to my own past, I did find a couple of episodes of missing time. Well, one, as a young child, I missed lunch. I have 5 brothers and sisters. You don't miss lunch. You won't, get enough food. So, and I was in my room. I'm like, why didn't you get me? And we checked. You weren't in there. I'm like, yes, I was. I still remember it. I was mad. So I think I don't know. It's ambiguous a little bit, but I sure will never forget that, because I was mad. But not long after I started investigating this, I did have a missing time incident. Little orb came down. Last thing I remember was it moving off. Because seeing UFOs on a number of occasions after that, you always tell people, you write it down. I completely forgot the whole incident. Didn't remember it until a few months later. But it was in 2022, on my birthday, by the way, that I woke up hurtling through space up this energy beam. And it was electric. And I remembered it. I remembered that feeling. I'm like, oh, I'm getting taken. This is fantastic. I don't believe it. I'm going to stay with them if they let me. This is what's going through my head. I know I'm crazy, but my experiences have been universally positive. At any rate, I'm pulled up and I'm laid out on a table. I'm like, wow, this is actually happening. I can't believe this. And there was this very tall lady, 6 feet tall or so, in a shiny white uniform, really thin, not quite human, not quite gray. She had tightly curled blonde hair, big wraparound eyes, kept asking me if I was okay. I wanted to get up. I'm like, I'm fine. She's like, no. We need to make sure you're okay. Short little guys around me. I wasn't really looking at him, but I jumped off the table finally. They're like, okay. And this turns out, Jimmy, to be Dolly's contact. She is in contact with a tall gray named Mama. I walked straight up to her. It was her. I recognized her just from Dolly's description. 8 feet tall, well, 7 to 8 feet tall, huge head, absolutely ET, but God, I don't even know how to describe it. Exquisitely graceful, just a picture of elegance. She tilts her head and said, "So, telepathically, is this what you thought it would be like?" And I said, "No, this is much better." It was so cool. I mean, I can't tell you how cool this was. There were people in the center of the room.
Okay. I'm with you on that. But you said something earlier, and it's one of my fears. One of the witnesses earlier said the ship smelled like a fish tank. All right. So one of my fears is you go and you take the trip, but you have to put up with some bullshit forever that you can't stand. Maybe it's the smell of the ship, or the food is awful, or the you're sleeping, whatever, no music, right? Whatever. That's my fear. Like, it would just be an excruciating. You know what it's like when you go on a road trip and somebody's got a mixtape of some crap that you don't want to listen to, right? And by the first stop, you're ready to kill somebody. And that's
well, look at it this way. You're already putting up with stuff here on Earth that you cannot stand. A whole long list of it. I think there's a lot more opportunity there with them.
Well, so you go to ET, what do? Hey, man, you guys have any incense? For what? This smells like rotten fish in here, man, and I can't deal with it anymore. And we got to do something about this smell. That's my take. What if it was just really bad food? I would be miserable. Well, but if there were some guarantees that we could check off, right? I'm down. I'm down for the trip. I would do it.
Yeah, well, I think if it comes down to an existential crisis on this planet, and they're scooping people up, because this is a message a lot of contactees get. I'm going, because what's the alternative? Stay here and watch the poles flip?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But then you have something like, Soylent Green, some crazy, she's just like, hey man, this food is great. What is it? It's our last passengers from France.
I asked Dolly about this. She's like, no, they eat chicken, they have fish, there's fruits.
I asked Dolly about that. Yeah. You remember, Star Trek, right? You just press in what you want and right. I forget what that food machine was called.
Yeah,
what was
the
it called?
replicator.
Yeah, the replicator. Galaxy Quest. That's what they did on Galaxy Quest. They made everybody's favorite
I just
food.
saw that movie. Yeah, that was a good one. Tim Allen and
You know what? It's one of the best science fiction movies. It's a comedy, but I'm not so sure it's a comedy. I think it's more of a documentary. Yeah.
E.T.'s Walking Among Us, right up into a Star Trek convention, or got whatever.
Well, you remember when he's in the limousine and her mask comes off? And remember that I think is how they would take our fears away, by presenting themselves as something that's not offensive. They would present themselves as us.
There's some indication of that in a few cases.
For
screen
sure.
memories of Greys essentially looking like a beautiful, handsome man or a beautiful woman. I've got a few cases, but
you've probably forgotten more stuff that you've researched than you remember. And that's what like this next case, a little girl from Maine, where ET shows up in her bedroom through the walls. What happens?
Yeah, it's funny because she kind of compartmentalized that for a long time until, as an adult, she runs outside and her little kid is screaming, and so is the cousin, and there's a UFO, classic saucer, right above the tree, 20 feet away. She's like, oh no, here we go again. She remembered dealing with this throughout her childhood. It began when a UFO followed her home twice. She got all the way home. She pointed out to her dad. He's like, yep, that's a UFO. Off it went. And then one day she's in her room and these guys just come right through the wall. And she had never heard of Greys. She's a little bit religious. She's thinking, what is this? Is this the devil? What's going on? She did not have any idea. And they're like, you need to come with us. Took her through the wall out into the front street, and right on her street is a landed UFO.
Flying saucer on the street.
Right.
Wow.
She's like, people are going to see this, because it wasn't that late at night. It was a warm summer night, but it was actually hovering, like, if I remember correctly, just a foot or two above, not actually landed, which is something I do hear quite a bit. But they took her inside of it. Next thing she knows, she's looking out the window, and there's a star field, and there's the Earth far, far below, instantaneously. She never felt any movement. And she was it was essentially your very standard onboard experience where she's laid out, physically examined. She doesn't remember some of this. She was going a little bit in and out. This was fully conscious, by the way. While I have dealt with people who've used hypnosis, I've shied away from it because I don't want to deal with people who are like, it's all hypnotically recalled.
Right.
I would say 80% of the cases I've dealt with are fully conscious. Maybe they don't remember everything, but these are conscious memories that they've had. But at some point,
have you heard of Pine Mountain Club? Okay, here in Southern California, you go up the 5 freeway.
Okay, yeah, I know where that is. Yeah,
Pine Mountain Club, which is a private town.
I looked at property there.
Yeah, it's private. They have their own school system, own fire department, everything. Once you go through those gates, and it's big, it's huge, but it's called Pine Mountain Club because it's in the middle of this giant pine forest, on top of this mountain, way out in the middle of nowhere. Beautiful area, but private. So people that live there don't want LA. You know what I mean? Okay.
It's close to LA too. Yeah, it's drivable.
So I hear about this case from Steve Murillo and Alex Mistretta, our good friends, right?
Right.
So Steve goes, hey man, let me tell you about this case that we researched at Pine Mountain Club. So he tells me the whole thing. They went up there and they met with a bunch of witnesses and contactees. And I'm talking about aliens in the backyard running around kind of stuff. It was nuts. Landed craft. So Steve tells me the whole thing, and Alex, and they videoed and they did you know how those guys research, they don't play around, right? They're really good. So years later, it's like 4 years ago, my cousin buys a house there.
Wow.
So I go up to see the new house and have a cookout. And I'm not even thinking about Steve. I didn't even make the connection. That part of it, it wasn't like I went, oh, Pine Mountain Club. Yeah, no, I didn't. I'd forgotten it. Steve told me about the case in 2012 or something.
Right.
And so anyway, so I go up there and we have this cookout and we're standing on the balcony overlooking the valley, and it's beautiful. And this is word for word what my cousin says to me.
Here we go.
He goes, see that hill right there? I said, yeah. What do you see? I said, pine trees. He goes, yeah, but what do you see on the hill? I go, no trees? Exactly. That's where the UFO landed. I go, what? And I'm looking, and I forgot about Steve Murillo. I wasn't making the connection yet. I go, what are you talking about? He goes, man, it's a famous case here. A flying saucer came down and landed right there, whatever he said 20 years ago. All the trees died. And that round circle that you see, it's like it's not 20 feet. It's like a quarter mile round. And because you see all the pine trees, right? But it's like a bald spot, right?
Wow.
Right on the side, top of this mountain, no trees. And then I'm like, Steve Murillo. I go, Pine Mountain Club. Right. Oh my God. And so he tells me his realtor told him the story of what that round spot was off in the distance. And that's where the flying saucer landed. And
Wow.
so my cousin says, so I start bringing this up in town. Everybody saw it, he said. Everybody watched this flying saucer land. And Steve went out and interviewed this family that were chasing the little grays out of their backyard back to the spaceship, onto the spaceship.
Wow.
Yeah.
Got to be careful where you move. I interviewed these two people who bought a house and started having encounters with grays. And like, what's going on here? Had someone come over and like, oh, where's the old owner of the house? I'm like, well, she doesn't live here anymore. We live here. I'm like, oh, well, she used to be in contact with grays. We would come over here and talk about it. So apparently they were still coming to that same house. So.
And this is a Pine Mountain Club. I'm not saying anything strange about the community there, but they're very conservative, I think is the right way to put it.
It's a beautiful area. I went up there.
Not liberal I don't mean it like that, but I mean it's just a community of like-minded people that just want to do their own thing, right?
Yeah,
but UFOs, that's not part of what they do. You know what I mean? But the incident itself happened, and they are open when they talk about it. Yeah. Wow. And it's a valley, right? So where this saucer landed, it came through. I talked to so many people about it. I talked to a waitress about it at the country club. It came right through, flew over everybody and landed back there. Wow. Wow. Yeah, amazing. Pretty nuts. Pine Mountain Club. All right, let's see. Let's go to the UK.
Oh, all right.
Let's go to the UK. A man from England experiences just about everything.
Yeah, it was really interesting. This is something I think is more the rule than the exception, which I said before. When someone's having contact, they're gonna have mediumship, visited by a wide variety of entities. It's pretty common when someone will see grays and different types of ETs. But for this guy, really nice guy, very opened up his life to me, sent pictures and everything. Had an experience where he woke up one morning and was playing with his brand new fire truck. He's just a little kid. He's like 6 years old. And kind of got lonely and went to go crawl in with his dad in bed till his dad woke up. And suddenly sees this bedroom door, which was ajar, start to open, and sees this shadow exerted on the wall. He's like, huh, something's there. And it opens up, and this short, hairy, little, demonic-looking ape steps into the room.
Okay.
This is how he described it. And we went, because he contacted me wanting to figure out what he saw. Was this a spirit? Was this he says it looked like a little Bigfoot. This is England. Probably not going to be a Bigfoot inside someone's house. I have to tell you,
hairy fairy. It's a hairy fairy.
Fangs, dark little eyes, 3 feet tall, big head.
Wow. Cool.
Some details very much like ET, but I can't say I've heard one quite like this. And steps fully into the room and stares at him. He's paralyzed with fright, right? Starts hitting his dad. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Didn't want to make too much noise because he was afraid of drawing attention to himself, and ended up having this 3 to 5 minute long, essentially a staring contest with this figure. At one point, he pulls the blanket over his head. And it's like, it's just going to go. It's going to go away. It's going to go away. Pulls it back. Nope. Still there. Still looking at him. And finally steps back, pulls the door, almost closed, still ajar, and off he goes. And he jumps up in bed and screaming and pounding on his dad. Like, something was in the room. His dad, of course, checks the house. Nothing's there.
Right.
And for years, he didn't know until he went up to the attic one day and was going through this box of books, pulls out, I think it was a Time Life Mystery or one of those books, and paging through it. And there's a little picture of a Bigfoot. He's like, that is exactly what I saw. So,
But baby Bigfoot.
3 feet tall.
Yeah, like Teen Wolf.
Yep.
Wow.
Strange,
Wow.
right?
And he saw, well, I think, you know what? Once you open your eyes to the world, you tend to experience a little bit of everything. And he certainly did that. But I often wonder if we're just witnessing the same thing, but differently. You know what I mean? That everything is connected. Our ghost, interdimensional ETs.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because that's the second most popular theory to explain what's going on. I will say most researchers who focus on cases of onboard experiences do believe that this is extraterrestrials in the classic sense, as do most contactees. But there's a school of thought that's pretty popular that this is not ET at all, that this is an intelligence that wears different masks and manifests differently depending on your belief system, your culture, and so forth. And that everything, all, Bigfoot, ghost, you name it, is an intelligence that is masquerading. I don't subscribe to that theory. Having had some of these experiences myself, having interviewed people, and became a Bigfoot researcher, I did ghost hunting. I've had experiences with all of this stuff. I think we're dealing with separate phenomena. I think there are little people.
Yeah, I know. Preston, it's all on the table. And there's so many different things that anything is possible, for sure. But if we go back, let's go back 200 years. Okay.
Yeah, you probably don't even need to go back that far.
Right. A family is experiencing ghosts in their house that travel through walls. Today, it's a gray alien coming through the wall, but it may be the same experience. They didn't know how to describe it 200 years ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
well,
that's
it's more complicated than that even, because this family from Illinois called me up and described a classic haunting. Doors opening and closing, footsteps, so forth. I'm like, well, yeah, that sounds like a haunting. And they're like, but there's this craft hovering over our house.
right.
Wait, what? So that added that threw a monkey wrench in. And I've got some of these bleed through cases. I talked to one lady. She was returned from a full-on onboard experience, poltergeist outbreak. And I started getting a number of these cases, and I sort of realized that this is what I think's going on. I think people are having their bioelectric field enhanced to a degree that it's them doing this. Because one lady she broke the computer, broke the fax machine, broke the copier right after a humanoid encounter in her apartment. It was her doing this. Burning out light bulbs. One guy, major contactee, is an auto welder. Works with this machine that's very expensive, kept blowing it out. And they took him, like, you need to go to the doctor right now. You keep breaking our equipment. You're costing us all kinds of money. Couldn't find anything wrong with him except for a weird little implant in his body.
I've met a few people, not one, a few people that, and I'll see that I don't wear watches during the show. I take off but when I go out in public, I'll put on a watch. But when I see somebody without a watch, I'll always make a comment. And I have heard over and over again, I blow watches up.
Yep.
They don't work on me. Now, they can wear a mechanical watch, one that you wind, right? But an electric watch, a quartz, they can't wear them.
Yeah, my first ever UFO sighting at a UFO meeting was with a contactee, Andy Reese. Took us out, called down a UFO, honest to God. Meditated for I don't know, 15
I remember
minutes.
this story. Please share it. This is great.
Yeah, this was my first experience. Right. Became an investigator, and this guy was a legit contact. He had a good story to tell. Says, I'm going to call down a UFO. I'm like, sure you are, buddy. It's like, if anyone who wants to see one after the meeting, come out into the park here in Santa Monica. This was 50 or 100 people at this meeting. Maybe 10, 15 people came out. I'm like, okay, well, I don't know. I thought everyone would want to see a UFO. So we all get in a circle, and he's like, okay, let's meditate. I'm like, what? No. I didn't sign up for meditating. I'm like, fine, I'm here, I'll do it. And we meditated, and he says, okay, they're here. I sense them. Look right there. And of course, we all look up. He says, don't look away, don't look away. No more than 15 seconds. I'll give you 30 seconds. And right exactly where he was pointing, this enormous, I've got to say, it looked like a shooting star, but it was really bright, and it came down at a 45-degree angle and flared out. But here's the problem. You couldn't see a single star in the sky. This is downtown Santa Monica. There's traffic on 4 sides.
That's right.
And my watch stopped. I thought that was weird.
Yeah, no, that's not weird. It's cool. Oh,
Yeah.
And so for you, for the first time experience like that, how did that make you feel?
Thrilled and a little bit angry because I wanted more. I'm like, well, it was just ambiguous enough. And I started to have quite a few of those, of unexplained lights. I'm like, dudes, if you're out there, you're going to have to do better than this. Because weirdly, finding out UFOs were real made me even more skeptical in a way, because I'd been lied to by the government, by my family, by my coworkers, friends. Lying by omission, maybe, but
right.
Still, I had to reevaluate everything and was skeptical. So I'd see a light and I'd be like, well, okay, it's a light. It's not a craft. So it took a while before I saw stuff. When I saw that orb come down in front of my car, I'm like, okay, that's unexplainable.
I've until I've seen lots of strange stuff in the sky throughout my life. And yeah, okay. It was really strange when I saw something on demand, like you're talking about. That was that changed things for me. And I'd seen stuff before, but the first time I looked up at the night sky, looked at this thing, and it was just a star right above me at 12 o'clock, straight up. And I'm looking at it, and it goes just like that, right above me. It goes, stops. It moved like that far at arm's length, and I don't know what that would be in cosmic terms, but I watched it move and stop. And when I swear, I was like, oh, right. I mean, my whole thing changed. And that was like, Preston, I did what we have done now so many times. I just looked and it happened.
Yeah.
Just
I've
like
had a
that.
few of those. I remember going out in my backyard in Reseda once and like, okay, you're out there, show yourselves. And this light flares up on the horizon. I'm like, not good enough. You can do better than that. And suddenly I see something coming towards me. I'm like, what is that? And it's low and it's big. And it's this ginormous owl swoops right over my head.
Oh, right on.
And there was something eerie about it. And I'm sure you've talked to
Screen Memory City, buddy. Screen Memory City.
Yeah, there's an owl connection there.
Well, the first time that I saw I was Steve Murillo again. Steve and I have had so many experiences together, just crazy stuff. But we're sitting in these lawn chairs, and we've got night vision and lasers, right? And Steve's laying next to me. His wife Pat is over there, and we've got like sandwiches, and we got Van Halen jamming, and we're out there for hours. And Steve goes, "See that right there?" And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "It feels strange to me." I go, and it was like in the Big Dipper, but in the bottom, and it was like this bright dot in the middle of the Big Dipper, the scoop part. And he goes, "I bet we can talk to it." And I'm saying, we're just laying there like this. And he takes the laser and he points it at it, and he goes, beep, 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 just like that. And on everything I live and breathe, that thing went beep, beep, beep back.
Yep.
And I was like, give me that thing, man. I take the laser, beep, 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 beep. We beep, beep with this thing for 30 minutes. Yeah. Yeah. Crazy. It was crazy.
Yeah, I've had that experience. Me and my brother and sister-in-law up in Crater Lake, same darn thing.
Same thing. Isn't that amazing when it happened? Yes. I've done it with a flash. Isn't it amazing?
Yeah, it was wild. Mark saw it first, my older brother. He's like, "Give me the flashlight." We're looking at him like, "You're crazy." He's like, no, right up there. And flashed it twice. This thing appears, flashes twice. No, first he flashed it once, it flashed once. Then he flashed it twice, flashed twice, right back at us. And that was right after I'd seen that orb and completely forgot about it.
See, I don't tell people these stories because they're just a little too crazy. But it doesn't change the experience. I mean, it happened, but it just sounds ridiculous coming out of my mouth. I hear what I'm saying. I do. I hear what I'm saying, but it doesn't change the experience. I remember Steve and I just laughing like little kids, just sitting there with this laser.
It's important to talk about, especially this high strangeness stuff. Here's a really good example. This one guy, this case is in the book, had little blue beings coming into his room. They'd wake up in the morning wrapped up like a Tootsie Roll in their quilts, to the point where, they couldn't get out. The parents would come in like, "What are you doing?" Like, "It's not us, it's the little blue man. We keep telling you." Interviewed another guy for this book. He read the book after, I sent it to him. He's like, "Sorry, I should have told you. I didn't even think of it. I had that same exact experience. Woke up, wrapped up tight like a mummy in my quilt. I've got 5 cases of that. I'm not kidding. That's a calling card. I think they're doing this on purpose. They've got a
Right.
sense of humor.
Or they don't know what a blanket is for.
Well, I mean, I can't rule it out.
Yeah. They're just getting tangled. And they think it's funny. Like, it sounds like baby pandas playing in the snow. You know what I mean? That innocent playing just to feel good. Maybe it's that.
I don't know, but it was really interesting to hear this guy say, should have told you, didn't think of it. Some people wake up with their head at the foot of their bed on top of the covers. Some people are dropped from a few feet right above the bed. Blunk. Like,
now, what about coming back in different clothes?
Yep. Well, that happened to Dolly Saffron. She came back with her someone else's pajamas on, inside out and backwards.
I think she told Dolly. Did you? I think she told us about that. Yeah, and the clothes on backwards. Because
that happens.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I know I've got other cases of it. Yeah.
2 quick questions before we go. First one, how many encounters, in a percentage wise, just you can ballpark it, have a medical exam involved?
Oh, I would say 70 to 80%.
It's that high.
It's the most common thing people describe. Yep.
Really?
100%. Yep.
It doesn't surprise me.
It's not in every case. Sometimes
no,
it doesn't happen, but
it's called science.
I think it's one of the main reasons people do have an onboard experience. It's a checkup. They're upholding our DNA.
It's science.
Is absolutely connected to what they're doing. It's one of their missions. It's healing. I'm telling you, Bud Hopkins has healing cases. David Jacobs, John Mack, Edith Fiore, Yvonne Smith, Barbara Lamb, Brad Steiger, Tim Beckley, Wendell Stevens. I could go on. They all have healing cases.
Yeah, Dolly says, I threw up on my mommy's jammies, I guess, and they sent me home with someone else's.
Yeah, this does happen.
That's pretty funny. Now, last question before we say goodnight. What's the percentage of contact experiences that do go to close encounters of the third kind, where you are face to face with ET?
Well, how common is it? Are you asking? Far more common than people realize. I think it's about 1 in 40, 1 in 50, or upwards of that even, because J. Allen Hynek, he's quoted as saying it was 1 in 40. I thought, no way. There's no way. That's what got me to ask everyone I knew, and I didn't have to ask 40 people, and I found 5.
Right.
The Roper poll found 1 in 50, but if you talk to contactees like Dolly Saffron or a couple of other people, a guy in England, he's fully conscious. He basically told me he thinks everyone has had some level of contact. That's what Dolly told me. This is what a number of contactees have told me. They're certainly aware of all of us. And I think everyone has been given the opportunity, but most people don't remember or don't remember yet. They're not wiping your memory. It's there. That's mostly on us. I used to blame them, but no, I think it's a two-way street. If we don't want to remember, They'll facilitate it. But it's interesting you had that sighting, didn't remember it. Huge red flag, Jimmy.
Man,
you're a contact.
I still do. I want to remember that. I still don't. I've tried to picture it. I've talked to 3 people now that were there that all tell the exact same thing. But
I know the feeling. I had missing time. I started having memories of what happened, being on board. So, but that took years, and it was a real wake-up call at one point, especially when I finally was taken fully conscious. I'm like, okay, hands down, this is, I don't believe in UFOs. I know I know they're real. I know extraterrestrials are real. I've seen them. So anyone can say whatever they want. I've had the experience. And until you do, you don't know. You just can't know until you have the experience.
That's for sure. I'm going to write about this in my book, but I'm going to share part of it with you. From the age, I was around 9 years old, 8 years old, 9 years old, 8 and 9 years old. We lived in this apartment in Waukegan. My mom and five kids.
Waukegan, Illinois?
Yeah.
Oh, me too. That's where I'm from.
Yeah, I was born at Great Lakes Naval Station.
Wow.
Yeah, which is Waukegan, right?
You're freaking me out now, because that's
I didn't know that about you either. So, yeah, I went to Clearview Elementary. Did you go to Clearview Elementary? That'd be even stranger.
We moved. Right before, yeah.
Anyway, that apartment specifically, I do not remember sleeping in my bed. Not one night. And I lived there for a year. I remember the bedroom. I don't remember sleeping. Isn't that strange? Now, my best friend, John, who lived across the street, I spent the night at his house on the weekends and, do the things that you do when you're a kid. I remember all of that. But our apartment, I don't remember. Not once. Wow. Isn't that crazy? I don't remember dreaming. I don't remember crawling in bed. I don't remember blanket. We had 2 bunk beds in there. My brother Danny, my brother Mike, and me all slept in that room. We had 2 sets of bunk beds. I don't know which one was mine.
Did you ever talk to them about weird stuff?
No. But if anything weird went down, I think if I regress that, all the shit would come out of my mouth. I don't even want to hear it. I don't even want to know. Preston, where can everybody go and check out all of your books, get them, follow you, and certainly Humanoids and High Strangeness, the new book?
Yeah, thanks, Jimmy. I appreciate it. I do have a website, PrestonDennett.weebly.com. I'm all over social media, pretty easy to find. Find the books on Amazon and other online retailers. But yeah, thanks for having me on the show, Jimmy. I appreciate it. It's always a blast.
Yeah, Preston, you're the absolute best, my friend. Thank you so much, and I look forward to our next conversation. Be safe out there. Preston Dennett, everybody. What a perfect night on the show. Man. So, PrestonDennett.com.weebly.com. Links are below on our website and throughout social media. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. What am I doing tomorrow night? Does anybody know? Hold on. I'll tell you right now. Love my foot switch. Tomorrow night, Ellie Molina is here. Psychic abilities in children. That's tomorrow night. But for now, all I've got is Go Back Lee Tap. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Special thanks to Bill, John, Dex, Jessica, Dennis, and Kevin. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music by Doug Aldrich. Intro, Space Boy. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2024 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Go back, Lee Tappy.